Live long and prosper, y'all. Chief Officer Kush Hayes here, coming to you with the newest edition of the Microdose. I got some bad news, unfortunately. Commander Kai got caught up in a transporter malfunction. Lieutenant Miniskirt has reported that she's seen figments of him, parts of his body. I don't know if we'll ever see Kai again. We've considered him missing in action, but here to bring us in is Captain Jaimel Hemphill. Captain, what's good?
Man, I'm good, man. Beaming on down. I'm super excited. The state of the Trek is strong, right? Like, we've got so many shows to talk about. Like, this is the first time I've recorded an episode where there were multiple Star Trek projects to talk about. So
yeah, man.
That's why in and of itself.
The state of the Trek seems to be incredibly busy. So last year we only had, I think we had Discovery and Picard and maybe short treks, maybe lower decks. For whatever reason, my Google search failed me, but I could swear we're now up to six active series. But I think Strange New Worlds actually comes out next month, Cinco de Mayo, which everyone knows is the perfect Star Trek holiday. Otherwise, I've only got 4 active right now. We've got Discovery season 4, we've got season 2 of Picard, season 2 of Lower Decks, and I think the first season of Prodigy. You have to confirm that one for me.
Yeah, Prodigy is done. Prodigy and Lower Decks seasons have concluded.
Okay.
So what we are in progress, and all of us are watching with anticipation, actually we just had one of the greatest season finales ever in Discovery season 4.
Oh,
and right now everybody's focused on Picard and waiting for Strange New Worlds to start. So I was just so impressed with the last 2 episodes of Discovery. I watched it because I love Star Trek at first, and now I watch it because I love the characters and I love Discovery. Much like every Star Trek series, Discovery really hit its stride in the 3rd season.
Okay.
I mean, like it. Aside from the original series, everybody knows Star Trek: The Next Generation is horrible the 1st season, tolerable the 2nd, and good in the 3rd. Deep Space Nine, everybody measures it, or it's always facial hair, isn't it? Because I'm about to say Deep Space Nine is, bald Cisco, goateed Cisco, or Cisco with hair, right? But it's also beard Riker or no beard Riker, right? Like Star Trek Next Generation gets good when Riker grows a beard. Okay. And the Discovery did the same thing. I think the weakest part about it was holding on to that nostalgia and trying to make it pre-Kirk, and also making it so close to the timeline of Kirk. Really hurt it. And you and I have had this discussion before. They could have told the exact same story and still set it after Deep Space Nine, and I think it would have been stronger for it. But in the 3rd season, the crew goes to the future. Spoilers. I mean, if you don't know this by now, you're 2 seasons behind. So, but in the 3rd season, the crew goes far into the future, and we finally see a more traditional Star Trek. And honestly, there are a lot of parallels to Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda, which was a Star Trek pitch before, but Gene was separate from CBS at the time, so we got Andromeda with Kevin Sorbo. But that actually is a Star Trek script that he wanted to do about the fall of the Federation and a captain bringing it back together. Sure. And they kind of did that in the microcosm for season 3. And the season 4 was completely about making contact with a new type of person, which is Star Trek at its core.
Elaborate on a new type of person.
Well, for those who don't know, I'm going to try to avoid spoilers because I really want our fans to go and look at the series if you haven't and give it a shot. But suffice to say, there's a galaxy-wide threat that may or may not have been caused by a seemingly benign species. Essentially, they are so different from us that they may not even realize that they're hurting us. So the crux of the last 5 or 6 episodes is trying to, one, go to a place that no Star Trek series has ever gone.
Okay.
Meet a type of species that has never been displayed, a completely new alien species that is not humanoid, and learn how to communicate with them to find a peaceful resolution. And you're doing this against the backdrop of the Federation trying to come back together. And there's still it's so broken up that even Earth is not part of the Federation anymore, and it's very insular. So you got all these people arguing over how to respond to this. Is it a threat? Should we attack? And you got them arguing the core issue of Star Trek, like peaceful coexistence and communication. And the fact that everyone comes together and obviously there's a resolution is beautiful. It's Trek at its core. It's exactly what we need right now, and learning how to bridge divides and talk to each other, and realizing diversity is strength and coming together. It's fantastic. It really, really reminded me why as a kid I loved Star Trek, because it just teaches you, it's one of those things where you could take a lesson from it and how to treat each other. It's awesome. It's inspiring. It's everything Trek is supposed to be. So I can't recommend season 4 of Discovery enough.
Now, I'm not jumping to Picard yet, but Picard is 25 years after the TNG timeline. How much further into the future is Discovery from that?
Yeah, Discovery goes clear 1,000 years into the future, essentially.
A fucking millennium? Wow.
Yeah. They separate everything, so they skip over everything. And there's a reason for that, is because technically, even though we haven't seen a series of what happened in the intervening time, we've had hints of it through Enterprise and I think even Voyager. There are tales of that you've seen people who were fighting what's called a temporal Cold War. So you knew that there was a time war going on that took place about 900 years in the future. So there's an established Trek lore. So what they did is they took Discovery past anything that they've talked about before. So this is even 100 years, and they're telling them, there was this temporal war. Time travel is actually illegal. So when Discovery shows up, it's actually a thing, because they're like, "Well, you time traveled? That's illegal." We had a whole war, and we stopped doing that, and now you guys show up. So it's interesting, and so they just wipe the slate clean, and it's completely shifting. I mean, there's no traditional enemies are gone. Like you've got Cardassians and Ferengi in the Federation. The Federation president has a heritage of being Bajoran and Cardassian and human. So like there's already like people being biracial or triracial, and so it's a great allegory for where we're headed for as a people. So it's really cool.
It makes me feel a lot better to see that Discovery finally just went like, we're just going to go 1,000 years in the future, and then we're going to put the kibosh on this time travel stuff. Over the winter holiday, I would pick up the remastered version of the original series, and I was just like, just like Night Court and Cheers, I'm just going to burn through this whole thing. And I couldn't really get more than 11 episodes into it, and they're within those 11 episodes, like, wow, there's a lot of Star Trek I haven't seen, man. Like, there's always like the core 20 that happened on like KBHK marathons, and I was like, even with the syndication runs at late at night, I think these are like the only 20 episodes I've seen. Fuck. But when we get to the Naked Time, which is only episode 3, that's when the Enterprise, now they discovered time travel. But then, like, at one point, Enterprise is like, we might have gone back in time for a minute. I don't know. Well,
there's a backdoor pilot, and we can get into this when we talk Picard, but there's a backdoor pilot for a Star Trek spinoff in like the 2nd season, I think. And they time travel, and they go back to like 1967 Earth.
Oh, wow.
So
very Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, time travel has been a part of Star Trek from the beginning. So it's very different now that they've time travel is an element of Picard's season 2, and so having Discovery not only in a future where nothing's unwritten, but also where time travel is not an option, taking away that story element from the writers is actually different for Star Trek as well.
Because every season, I think up to Picard, has had some sort of time travel. I mean, there was a whole movie about it with the whales and all that shit, But at some point, it's just like, how much have these guys altered time? And like, how this has to be like a routine thing? Is there training for this now? Like, hey, Ensign, you might go 50 years in the future someday. You never know. Like, you need this utility belt, especially for that. I don't know where I was going with that.
One of the greatest episodes of Deep Space Nine is Trials and Tribulations, where they Forrest Gump the Deep Space Nine crew into the original series, and it's funny because the framing device is like the time cops grilling Cisco you know, on what he's done. They're like,
Mhm.
did you talk to anyone? He's like, oh no, and he's getting an autograph from Kirk. You know, it's just great.
That episode is a lot of fun because again, it poked holes in the original season. Like we're supposed to be just like so advanced and so sophisticated, but then like Dax was like, "Wow, these mini skirts are like really mini, man. What happened in the 23rd century? What happened only 45 years ago?"
Yeah.
Let's jump to Picard here. I don't have the Paramount Plus. I don't have P Plus. I get all my information from like other YouTube channels. Like their opinions aren't my opinions, but when I'm hearing I'm just like, well, that doesn't sound so great. Spoiler alert: Captain Picard is now a robot. But does Q understand that in this new season? Because it doesn't sound like he does.
So here's the thing. I don't know. I'll be perfectly frank. I'm not a huge fan of that end of the season of Picard, and I think maybe they just thought they were only going to do one. Maybe they thought that people wouldn't feel it as much. I don't know what they were thinking, but there was a sense of finality to that ending of like, okay, and then he lived happily ever after, and it like. And they'd established in the Next Generation series that Picard eventually would have this degenerative disease in the future. And so it's only natural that since they skipped 25 years later, that he would have the disease. Like, okay, that's cool. That's what it is. And I think maybe they wrote themselves into a corner because they're like, oh, it gives the story a sense of urgency because now he's racing against not only trying to save the last remnant of his friend Data, which is a really cool emotional story. You know, he's not out to save the universe. He's just out to save the memory of Data. That's basically what the first season is about. He finds out that there may be something left of Data and he wants to see if he can find it and use it to bring his friend back. He's the only crew member he's lost from his bridge crew in his entire adventure, aside from Youre. So the disease gives him a sense of urgency because you don't know when he's going to die. And I think they got to the end and was like, hold up, we could tell more stories with this character. And Patrick Stewart's like, yeah, I know I'm getting up there, but I could do one or two more. And they're like, so what do we do? Oh, we'll give him an android body. And then the idea is like, it's not even android, it's a golem because it's basically a clone without the disease. It's still going to age. He's still going to cease to exist. He's still going to die. It's just, he's not going to die of this disease. And I'm like, that makes no sense. Like, if anything, this is the time to recast Picard if you're going with that. Like, you know what I mean? Just bring in another actor or something if you're going to do that, because it just makes no, like, why I get, in story, it's like, oh, I want a body that's just like mine. I never wanted this. So they make him an exact replica of his body. But why is he still frail? Why not give him some new joints? Why does he still have weak lungs? Like,
this is why I was like, in the Eternals, why is that? Why would you make a deaf robot? Yeah. Also, what sign language is she speaking?
Yeah.
But that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah. So like in the second season, they seem to have just whatevered that away. It's like, okay, that happened. We're really not going to address that anymore. We've just got another adventure to tell. And this also, I think people have this it's the same argument. It's just louder because there's an internet now, but it's the same argument that Deep Space Nine got. The people really sometimes didn't like seeing the underbelly of the Federation. And so, you have Rafi, who's living on the outskirts. His first officer basically is living on the outskirts. She's quit Starfleet. She's kind of just living in a trailer. She likes to do drugs. Rios is an ex-Starfleet. It's all, his crew is entirely made up of people who are disenfranchised with Starfleet for various reasons. Right. And so like it is the seedy underbelly of Star Trek. And some people just don't like seeing that. They think that they're just held on to that Roddenberry vision where everything has to be okay at the end of the episode and everyone is the best at their job and there's no conflict whatsoever. We're just all buddies. And that's not what, any of the series really since then have been. And in Picard season 2, that is rectified. Rios is a captain again. Honestly, he has the coolest catchphrase of any captain. I thought "Let's Fly" was cool coming from Michael Burnham, but his Dale with a cigar in his mouth is kind of dope. So, because he's of Hispanic descent, so he speaks Spanish. So his thing, he has a cigar in his mouth, and when he executes a command, he takes the cigar out and goes "Dale," which was really cool. We only get to see it in the first episode, but it's kind of cool.
They're allowing smoking cigars on the bridge in the future with that concentrated oxygen.
I mean, that's his thing. That is his thing.
That wasn't even a thing in Star Trek 1960.
Exactly. He's completely different that's why I like it. He's completely different from every captain. He's a unique character. I mean, I don't think Gene Roddenberry would like a smoking captain at all. But the fact that you have this captain that's completely different than anyone before, they're not carbon copies of he's immediately a unique guy. I'd watch a show with this guy as the captain,
I'll probably get that show too.
Yeah. So I'd watch a show with him as the captain. Like he's immediately like this unique character. The young Romulan with the sword is now in Starfleet Academy. He's the first Romulan in Starfleet Academy, and Rafi is his mentor. She's a teacher at the academy. So they brought them all, and now the nostalgia freaks are okay because everyone's in uniform, right? Okay. Like Picard is chancellor of the academy. Rafi's a teacher. Eleanor is now a cadet. The only person who's not in uniform again is 7 of 9, but she's still doing her thing as a bounty hunter or whatever. So yeah, but it's back to, it's Starfleet and everybody's good. And, so they give you a little bit of that before taking them on the adventure. And I think that's why the Picard season 2 reviews have been a little bit better than season 1. But what does suck is that the setup of this story was the perfect chance to have actually a Picard Cisco reunion. Perfect chance.
I haven't heard anything about this, really.
Well, okay.
So did it not happen?
It did not happen. It was the perfect chance, though. Yeah. So let's give a 5-second spoiler alert before we're going, because now we're going to talk about specific plot details. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, you've entered here at your own risk. All right. So the plot line of Picard season 2 is that they essentially have to travel back to the year 2024. That is the same year that Cisco, Dax, and Bashir, I believe, travel back in the future past tense episode of Deep Space Nine. And I thought it would be really cool to see Picard run into a Cisco that's also time traveling and actually resolve their differences while sharing a little bit of their adventure. But instead, they chose to have Picard go to Los Angeles instead of San Francisco. So the sad part, I just have to point this out. The sad part of this is that in that Deep Space Nine episode, they were 20 years early, but they were talking about tent cities. And they had sets of tent cities. And now here in 2022, they did it in Los Angeles, but they didn't have to go to a set. And that's incredibly disheartening. Oh, wow. Did they film really on Skid Row? I think there's some B-roll of Skid Row. Wow. I don't think they actually had, Jerry Ryan walk through Skid Row, but there's some B-roll of it, and it's they probably didn't have it do that. So. Yeah. But it's sad. It's honestly sad that, Indeed. I'm pretty sure the writers of that episode did not intend for it to be a documentary, so. I want to bring up Skid Row with you right now, but this is Star Trek, so we're just gonna move forward because we'll talk hours about that shit. That's just a huge problem in San Francisco today. Yeah. But Picard, it's technically the next generation timeline, 25 years later, but Cisco's there, and the Voyager thing has happened. Why is 7 of 9 repeatedly brought into Picard's world? And I'm going to expand on that because when Star Trek Nemesis came out, they were trying to shoehorn Jerry Ryan into that too, despite not being a Voyager movie. What's the deal there? Like, I get Jerry Ryan's a pretty lady, but come on. 7's a popular character for sure. Like so that's out of but honestly, as a writer, you would argue that of all of the Star Trek characters, like aside from their shared vision of being in Starfleet and being like heroic people, 2 people who have the most in common are actually Seven of Nine and Picard.
100%.
Both had their identities robbed of them by the Borg.
Yes.
And they're the only two who can understand that experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of all the characters we have.
Yes.
And so, Seven of Nine and Picard, it actually makes sense that if you had to deal with some Borg stuff, you know, the number of people who have dealt with the Borg and lived to tell the tale, let alone got a victory, is infinitesimally small, right? Yeah,
just two.
So like, it made sense for me in the moment you started talking about Borg, it would just make sense, you know, that they would bring her back, and so now in Picard season 2, it's more of that they are acquaintances, and it is not, and it's like not necessarily like, oh, let me go pick up 7 and 9 before I go on my adventure. It's more of a shoehorning Worf in, like they did in what was the not Insurrection, but was it Nemesis, where they go back into First Contact. When they go in First Contact, that's where they're fighting the Borg, and they go back in time to help Zephyr Cochrane fly. Mm-hmm. And like Worf just happens to be there in the Defiant, and he's helping them fight. And for some reason, the Defiant gets crippled, but the Enterprise doesn't, even though the Defiant was designed by Ben Sisko to fight the Borg. But that's a whole nother thing. And Worf ends up on the thing. That's basically what happens in Picard. Like, they're investigating something. 7 ends up at the same place, and then she ends up on the ship with Picard, and then shenanigans happen, and she ends up going back in time with them. So it's an interesting thing. They brought in Whoopi Goldberg's Guinan.
Yes.
And there are some great callbacks. I love that we've got a sense that fans are really writing these shows. There's a great callback in the second episode of Picard that actually has a callback to Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. They got the same actor who played the punk on the bus that Spock neck pinches to be on a bus in this show. And 7 of 9 is like, hey, turn your radio down. He's like, okay. Right. Like, he like touches his neck and he's like, oh yeah, no, you know what? I'm sorry. I just really like that song. And he's like listening to the same song. It's like same song. He's got the same hairdo, but he's got a beard, listening to the same song, wearing pretty much the same clothes that he was in 1984. It's pretty funny. And
I don't have the actor's name in front of me, but the fun fact on recall. That's his band. Like he's just a dude that works on sets, and he got to be on Star Trek 4, and he's just like, this is my band. Let me just listen to them in this scene, and then Spock gives him the pinch. All right. Yeah,
that was really cool. There's also a tie-in to the aforementioned spinoff that I talked about. There's an episode of the original series. You can check it out in your Blu-ray. It's called Assignment Earth, in which the Enterprise goes back in time. They have to stop, I think, Klingons or the Romulans try to interfere in history and get a nuclear bomb launched.
Oh, fuck.
And so the Enterprise teams up with an alien, or actually he's a human who was kidnapped by aliens and sent back as what's called a supervisor. And his name is Gary Steven. He has a computer and a cat, and it's totally set up for a spinoff. It's a backdoor pilot, and he's a supervisor, and he's designed to protect Earth during interesting times. And so Picard has been sent back to 2024 in this new season of Picard to find someone. He thinks that it's Guinan, and he meets a younger version of Guinan. And Guinan's like, no, what you want is the supervisor. And so then you find another version of Gary Seven. It is not Gary Seven. It's played by another actress who's already in the show, and a bit of like a double casting, stunt casting. But the fact that it's called a supervisor, and they do use the special effect that's reminiscent, an updated version of a special effect they did in 1968 or whenever Assignment Earth originally aired. And it's a callback to I think the second season of the original series. Okay. So it's a great callback. If you've never seen it, you're just like, okay, this is some weird new character. But if you have seen it, it's an awesome Easter egg for longtime fans.
I've got Assignment Earth written down here. I'm probably going to check this out later tonight.
Pretty weird episode. You're watching and go, okay, I see why they didn't pick this up. It's a really complicated setup, but it's an interesting, inexpensive episode of Star Trek.
Is it complicated for the 1960s, or is it complicated even for today?
Nah, just complicated for 1960s. I mean, just the setup where also like it would have been done better as its own pilot, and because like it's like, okay, I was kidnapped by aliens, which is enough. Then I was sent back, to monitor things. That's enough. And I've got this cat that can turn into a woman. I've got this computer that's behind a magical door. Like it's all this stuff, and it's just a lot in a show about a spaceship that just traveled back in time to fight aliens. So like it's just a whole lot, for I think done by itself today, you can probably make it work.
Gene Roddenberry, the former police officer, is smoking a lot of wild shit in the 60s, dude.
Hey man, when that creative mania takes hold, you never know what's going to come out.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. But Picard season 2, so far so good. I mean, it's 3 episodes in out of probably 10. Mm-hmm. Story is really just getting started. I think writers' rooms are getting more diverse, and that tends to, how do I put this? People's like ethnicity and culture have a more of an effect on the stories they tell.
Okay.
And their interactions with other people, like it's like Doctor Who. Like if Martha Jones had been a Doctor Who companion in the 60s, they would have went back to 1920 and everybody would have been fine. Right. But now you make Martha Jones go back, and when she was added now, in modern times, when they go back in time, if they go back to a place where she would have been treated in a racist manner, that happens in the show. Right. So, and that's what I mean. Like, so like, people's ethnicity and stuff is acknowledged more in scripts. So I know people are complaining and calling it quote unquote woke, which I hate as a pejorative, but that does happen in Picard. I mean, one of the characters gets injured. He's Hispanic and he doesn't have any ID because he's from the future. So you can imagine what happens when he tries to get help in LA. Yeah. Right. So like 30 years ago, people would have ignored the fact that he's the cool Hispanic character, and it would have just, everything would have been okay. All the drama would have been derived by him being from the future. But here there's an added peril because of who he is and where he's at in history. Mm-hmm. So they do deal with that. That's an ongoing part of the story because he's separated from everyone. So it's interesting. It's really interesting. I'm wondering where it's going to go. We'll see where it goes.
I think today, modern day, a lot of people's butts are way more puckered than they were even in the 1960s. And I feel like you would have had the hip Hispanic character who would have been threatened with deportation from the past, but some network executive was like, yeah, we're not going to do that. And for reasons A, B, and C here. And you're just going to make something funny happen. But
well, keep in mind, what's funny? You wouldn't have to do that story back in 1966, 68, because I'm pretty sure the Vietnam War was not over by then, correct?
No, it was 1970s.
Yeah. So at that time, we actually had open borders with Mexico. So fun historical fact. The head general of the Vietnam War was put in charge of border security after the Vietnam War, and he felt that we lost that war because of open borders. And that's when we closed borders with Mexico. Until then, people came over here, worked, and went back home, and everything was cool. Yeah. So, and very interesting. Anywho, that's totally another podcast.
Yeah, that's another podcast entirely. Yeah. But
yeah, it's good stuff. I'm enjoying all of this. I look forward to Strange New Worlds. I don't know what kind of stories it's going to tell that haven't already been told before. I'm really not a fan of going backwards in the Star Trek timeline.
Yes. Need to go forwards. Backwards is no
exactly.
Good.
Yeah, but I am excited because I'm a fan of Anson now. He's one of my favorite actors. I even thought he was good in Inhumans. That's how much of a fan I am of him.
I only know of Inhumans. I never watched it.
Oh gosh, it was the worst thing I've ever seen. I'm sorry to everyone involved. I don't want to insult your effort, but
it seems to be a universal consensus. Where they even had like an in-theater preview, and like depending on where you were, the average was 2 people showed up to watch this Marvel TV series on the big screen. They're like,
it was incredibly bad, but he did the best he could with what he had. But Hell on Wheels, one of the greatest TV shows of the 21st century.
It's the train show on AMC, right?
Yeah, that was a fantastic show. Fantastic. Really?
Okay.
Yeah, so good. I have well, you can't see because I got my background on, but behind me, I have the entire set on Blu-ray. So if you ever want to come hang out and watch it, I'm down. Okay. It's one of my favorite shows, and so I'm looking forward to him as Pike. He did a great job. Reimagined Enterprise is fantastic. fleshing out Majel Barrett's role with Rebecca Romaine as number one.
Oh,
Super
did
cool.
we switch number ones?
No, Rebecca Romaine has been number one. She was number one in the reimagining for Discovery when they encountered the Enterprise, and now they gave her a name. She's Una, and she'll be first officer.
Okay.
Yeah. So and like they've got Uhura, which is super cool. They
Who's
recast
playing Uhura?
a new actress, and I apologize for not having her name. They just gave her vignette that they introduced her on Twitter. But she's Cadet Uhura at this time. She's not a lieutenant.
That's exciting.
So she's just joining. Spock, of course, is like an ensign or a lieutenant. And then you've got a really cool Anar engineer. So there's no Scotty. There's an Anar engineer, which is a offshoot of the Andorans. They are lighter skinned Andorans who cannot see.
Cannot see. Oh, Jesus.
They're blind. Yeah, they live underground on Andor. They were introduced in Enterprise. So it'll be interesting seeing how he serves, because they've said like, oh, his senses are incredibly acute because he's like basically Daredevil, because they're also like lightweight psychic. If I recall, then when they were introduced to Enterprise, they were psychic. Right. So they were just a different species of Andorans who really didn't really mess with. It'll be interesting to see why he's in the Federation, because if I recall in the Enterprise episode, they didn't want anything to do with the blue Andorans in terms of space travel or anything. They were incredibly close knit, and they didn't leave their underground things. And they had been. That's why they're blind. They've been underground so long that their eyesight, they evolved to not have eyesight. So so it'll be interesting seeing him interact with the crew. They've got some woman who has the same last name as Khan, so I'm interested to see what that's about.
Okay. Yeah. So I've been catching little press releases here and there. I understand we're going to get a new Lieutenant Kirk or Commander Kirk, or not Captain yet, but James Kirk is going to make a new debut.
Yeah, I'm not excited about that. That's exactly why I don't want to go backwards. It's like, dude, it makes no sense because Kirk should be on the Farragut. Like it is so much established canon, and it's funny that everybody had a problem with Discovery, right? Like, oh, you fought the Klingon, this isn't canon, but you're okay with Kirk showing up on the Enterprise before he's captain? Like, all right, that says a lot more about you than me. Okay.
Yeah, I hear you.
But yeah, I'm hoping it's just for a guest star thing, because Kirk, and what was weird is he was wearing a captain's uniform. He was
weird.
Wearing because the stripes on the, instead of pips, the original series has the stripes on the wrists, and his stripes were a captain's stripes. Yeah, so it's really weird that he would be there. At that time he should be a lieutenant. Like, as far as I understand, that the Enterprise is his first command, unlike Picard, who had ships before he got the Enterprise. So it'll be really interesting. Maybe it's a time travel story. Maybe,
oh God, I hope not.
Maybe that's what it is. But I was like, especially in the first season, should you let this cast stand on its own?
Yes,
you should, and grow before you bring in established characters. It's bad enough that Spock's there. If it hadn't been for the fact that it's been established that Pike and Spock were incredibly close friends already, I mean, that's from the pilot of Star Trek that they're close and everything. So, but if you could somehow get it to where Spock wasn't on there, I would recommend that. And I'm like, Uhura's there, and I'm like, so you're telling me Uhura kept getting promoted, but she was still just communications officer?
I mean, some people just like sitting in the chair. Yeah, some people just like listening to the radio frequencies. This is what I'm good at.
She was in the same chair for 20 years. Like, that makes it worse.
That's the best angle to show her thought.
I guess so. My goodness. So yeah, we'll see. I like it. We'll see. Hopefully they're able to make it different and tell some new stories. I think it'll scratch that itch for people who want nostalgia, since the Orville's going away. If all you want is retreads of Next Generation, this isn't Star Trek. Well, you can watch the Orville because it looks and feels and sounds exactly like everything did 30 years ago. And so I think Strange New Worlds is being made for those people. Like, I just want my episodic, non-thinking, preferably led by a white male TV show. You know, it makes me feel bad. So they're getting, you know.
So is it
So
confirmed this is going to be episodic, or are they going to do the whole 10
yeah,
episode
yeah, they
narrative?
have said like, you know, they're going to move away from the story arcs,
Okay.
and this will be more episodic, like you know, some of the older Trek. Which is
As
funny
someone
because like
who's watching everything, are you feeling the episodic season, or are you feeling the arc seasons versus the episodic episodes?
um I'm cool with the arcs because the seasons are so much shorter,
Okay. Okay.
you know, because nothing would happen. You would feel so unsatisfied if you watched 8 or 10 individual stories. You'd be left wanting more, just like, you know, what is it? Like, I don't know. Think of any Netflix show, you know, that's episodic. You know,
Yeah.
you binge them and then it's like, nothing really happened though. You know,
Mhm.
at least with this, you tell them a complete story. If you have 20 episodes, you can afford to do episodic stuff. And then
Mhm.
you can then use 2 or 3 to do something big to end the season and make someone feel like they got a complete story. So I'm hoping Strange New Worlds is able to make it episodic, but still build some connective tissue so that way you get to know the characters. And that's actually a formula they seem to have kind of matched with Discovery. Although you getting to know the characters often comes in like a big exposition dump because now they're trying to catch up and introduce you to this whole crew that really didn't matter because they were juggling 2 captains or
Mhm.
3, as the case may be. I mean, if you think about it, Discovery's had 4 captains. It's Michelle Yeoh's Captain Georgiou, Captain Lorca, Captain Saru, and now Commander Burnham becoming Captain Burnham. When in fact, Burnham should have just been captain from the jump. Like she probably
Mhm.
should have been captain after the first season. And because they were doing this story of Burnham's journey to captain, every other character on the bridge suffered. There were
Oh
just too
wow.
many, you know, and they had to drop a few characters, rearrange it. And now finally in season 4, you have this nice balance of characters. You finally have the engineer you love to watch, the science lab guy you love to watch, the doctor you love to watch. You
Mhm.
know, you see why the 2 helmsmen are cool, helmswomen are
Mhm.
cool. You know, I finally know the name of the communications guy. You know, like they finally have voices and stories and they interact. It's just gotten a lot better, a lot better.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Lower Decks feels more like a robot chicken type thing, but is Prodigy actually telling a story?
I believe Prodigy is telling a story now. Prodigy was one that I actually couldn't totally get into.
Oh.
I'm gonna try to go and rewatch it because people were saying like they're enjoying it as adults. It was
Mhm.
something that I really wanted to watch for my daughter, and she just she's too cool to hang out with me, man. So she decided she didn't want to watch it. She was like, she,
Okay.
you know, she doesn't kick it with nerds, you know, apparently.
I
And
think that's
so
just
I was like,
rebelling against
oh
our parents. Like, yeah, my
yeah,
mom was into the original series, and I'd be like, "Why are you watching this tribute to the 25th anniversary? It's 25 years ago, man. That was a long time ago. So what? You know." Even knowing that it was only 3 years long, like 8-year-old Kush was correct, but at the same time, it's just like, that's what are you doing? I don't know. All right.
yeah. It's she didn't watch it, so I let it go. But people are saying that the ends by the end of the season, it's really good. But the first 2 episodes were really really good. They didn't feel like Star Trek episodes at all, Prodigy.
hmm,
Because there's no mention of Starfleet or anything of the Federation or anything like that. It takes place in the Delta Quadrant,
mhm,
which is where the Voyager series takes place, where they're lost.
right.
And so, seeing as how this is like around the same time as Lower Decks, which is kind of between Picard and Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and all that,
Hmm.
it's kind of in between that time. So there's still no Federation presence out there, and it is like some kids find a ship, like a experimental ship that was sent to the Delta Quadrant, and now they're piloting it around. It's kind of cool. They're it's if I could describe it, it felt almost like it was turning into Starfleet Academy, but on a
Hmm.
ship. So
Okay.
it's like taking what everyone wanted to see. Like if you asked anyone after Deep Space Nine or Voyager, what's the next show they wanted to see, I think the overwhelming sentiment is that people wanted to see Starfleet Academy. Like
Mhm.
I think if you could go back in time, and I think most fans would tell you like Enterprise is cool, Scott Bakula is dope, but
Mhm.
I would have rather seen a Starfleet Academy show because they had done so much stories on Starfleet Academy and we never saw it actually day to day, which would have been really cool. I think what Prodigy does is it scratches that itch by showing people learning what it means to be Starfleet,
Mhm.
but they're being taught by a hologram on a ship. So you still get all the action of being on a ship and you're not stuck on like Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine could be a slow character study because it was set on a station.
Mhm.
They had to leave to find action, right? The ships,
Yeah.
you go to where the action is. So I think it seems like it's a cool balance. I only made it 3 episodes in though. I'll have to actually go and watch the whole thing to have an opinion.
We got Discovery, Picard, Lower Decks, Prodigy, the upcoming Strange New Worlds. Am I missing another series? It feels like I am, but I could just be
I want to
mistaking
say
short
Michelle
threads.
Yeoh has a Section 31 series in
Okay.
development. And
Okay.
I've always thought that would be a good idea. They kind of beat me to the punch with the new series of Discovery where the Orions are the bad guys.
Hmm.
But there's always been stories about the Orion Syndicate, and they're like the criminal element in the
Hmm.
Star Trek universe. And I've
Orions are the
always thought,
sexy green chicks for those not.
yes, which Enterprise flipped on its head by showing that the green chicks are not slaves; they actually control the men via pheromones, and they pretend that just to draw people in.
I don't even know they were slaves, but that's sexy as fuck.
Yeah, it's and Orion woman is the main bad guy in Discovery season 3, which is
All
cool.
right. All right.
Yeah, she's the head of the thing, and also Lower Decks has an Orion character. Actually, the green character in Lower Decks is Orion,
Hmm.
and they do have fun with that. Like she's like, I hate the stereotypes. Everyone thinks I'm supposed to be sexy. Like she's like, it's like everyone thinks I'm supposed to dance. That's not all of us. But
All right, babe.
it's really good. But I've always thought of Section 31 versus the Orion Syndicate,
Hmm.
like Star Trek The Wire would be a
Okay.
fantastic show,
It'd be a different
and
show
so
entirely.
I'd be
Yeah.
really interested in seeing. But yeah, there is supposedly it's under development. It's Michelle Yeoh though. I mean, are you really like you're gonna have to like really hurry up if you're gonna one, she's getting older, so she can't do the action like she would probably want to. Not everybody can
Hmm.
be Ming Na Wen. And
Right, right,
two,
right.
she's also a movie star. So if you wanted to do a 10 episode series, you're gonna have to have that thing ready and ready to go. So we'll see if that happens.
Did she get more than one episode, more than one season of Discovery, Michelle Yeoh?
No, they had to really bend over backwards to bring her back in. I think her
Hmm.
entire character arc is due to her popularity.
I think there
She
was
was
something
actually a
with a
stunt
mirror mirror character as well.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
because she was a stunt cast. Like you
okay.
had Michelle Yeoh, and you thought it was going to be Michelle Yeoh and Burnham as her first mate,
Yeah.
and in the first episode, Burnham commits mutiny, and Michelle Yeoh's character is killed by Klingons.
Oh shit.
So like she dies in like the first, I want to say 15 minutes of the show. And you're
Oh
like, holy
fuck.
crap! Like, why did you brought Michelle Yeoh? And I was all set for some Michelle Yeoh, and you took her from me. And then they bring her back as the Emperor, which was cool. But her arc is pretty much done at the end of the first season, I think. But then they bring her back, and it's almost like they didn't know what to do with her for a little bit. She's kind of just floating around, and then they finally wrote her out to set her up for the Section 31 series. But it's really weird because I mean, she's not the same person, right? You
Right.
think yes, she looks like the captain that you love, but she's actually a space Nazi. Like,
Yeah.
like for me, it was just weird when they wrote her character out and everyone's giving her hugs, like, "We'll miss you." I'm like, you realize she's a mass murderer. Like, that's not the same. Why are you hugging
Yes.
her? Like she's a totally a mass murderer. I don't care if you like she looks like the captain. She's not the
Yeah.
same person. She's literally like Saru is saying goodbye. I'm like, yo, she was eating you in the other like she ate other species. The other like, you kidding me? She ate your
People are weird.
friends. Why are you hugging her? This is not good.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, no, right. People are weird, man, and it's always been a thing for me where like Darth Vader is now on the shirts of like, hey, it's Star Wars night at the SF Giants game. Like, here's a big shirt with Darth. I was like, I don't want Space Hitler on my daughter's T-shirt.
Exactly.
Okay.
But that tells you that's why Star Trek fans are better than Star Wars fans. Like You should know. You should know that Star Wars fans are bad when the majority of them dress up like the Nazis. Like no one dresses up like a Jedi at conventions. Everyone's dressed up as a stormtrooper. That weirded me out. Like I'm like, yo, why are you dressed like the space Nazis? Why are those your favorite characters? Something is wrong with this fandom. Like you're dressed
in theory, you would think it's the cheapest costume, but it's really not. You could just throw like some old
it's not even
blankets.
You have to work at that.
Yeah.
You could just get a robe. You can get a blanket and be a Jedi.
A blanket, exactly. Yes.
You can get a bathrobe and a blanket and be a Jedi. You have to buy a bunch of PVC pipe, put some wiring in there so your voice comes through. It takes work to be a space Nazi, and you guys do that. Like,
have you seen that video of the stormtrooper in Australia trying to walk down the steps of the train station? That mask inhibits all your vision, so he misses a step and just goes but like loses half his armor, but then he tries to Chris Rocket and just like walk it off, like again his chest plates hanging off and part of his butt plates hanging out, but he's like that didn't happen.
Well, he was wearing armor.
He was wearing the armor. All right, so let's see. We got Discovery, Picard, Lower Decks, Strange New Worlds. So today, April 5th, 2022, Paramount has released a 4K update of Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Are you watching it?
If they had only done it to Star Trek 2, like
that may still be coming. That may still be
everybody
coming.
knows like the odd numbers Star Treks are not the greatest. Like that's the rule of thumb. Mm-hmm. And I mean, Star Trek the motion picture, I mean, I'd watch it for that first, like, what is it, like 20-minute reveal of the Enterprise? Yeah, I'll watch that. You know, but am I sticking around for V'ger? Nah.
I gotta admit, man, I don't think I've ever sat through the entire motion picture in one sitting. I don't even know if I've seen the whole thing.
It is boring. 2001 long. Like it is.
Yeah. And 2001 is sick. Like it. I finally only saw that movie like 5 years ago, and I was like, "This is dope." I'm glad I'm watching this on IMAX. But when you're watching it on TNT, there's commercials every 10 minutes. And you're just like, "Oh God, now it's 4 hours long."
Yeah, it's not good. You know, honestly, I'm kind of perturbed that we are getting all these 4K and HD updates, and we still have yet to get an update of Voyager and Deep Space Nine.
That's fair.
I think that's fair. That really needs to be done. I understand that it's a little more costly, but come on, man, you got them on your streaming service. People aren't going to watch them at a point. There's going to get to a point where it's unwatchable, right? Because people's TVs are going to be so high definition that watching these old shows, you know, is going to be tough. So if you don't at least do a 1080p restoration, let alone redoing the special effects. I mean, there's an article that just came out the other day. Someone wrote, like, if I can do this, why can't Paramount? And they literally had updated, you know, some scenes from Voyager and Deep Space Nine. They're like, if I can do this, why can't Paramount? They can totally do it, you know. And if you got a Deep Space Nine remaster, you'd get that money back. Put it on Blu-ray. I'll be there day one. I know millions of people will be there day. You'll make the money back.
I mean, that's part of the problem is just oversaturation. Like updating the effects to a Star Trek series isn't new. They've been doing that since the year 2000. The Sci-Fi Channel, before they got a wacky spelling, they did Star Trek 2.0, where they're like, all right, so folks can't see this, but the background behind me, like, all right, maybe the panels weren't all just colors. Maybe they were more akin to the next generation's panels, but they were brighter and they actually looked more quote unquote realistic. The exteriors of the Enterprise were, again, a lot more polished. But that's, you know, we were thankful that they didn't add anything else extra to it, like a George Lucas with Star Wars.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you watch, have you ever seen What We Left Behind? It's a documentary on Deep Space Nine.
No.
Complete with interviews and everything. It's really good. And two of my favorite parts of the movie are where they reassemble most of the writer's room and they storyboard or brainstorm what would happen season 8, episode 1. And which is really fun. Wow. And then they also showed, I think, 2 minutes of footage that they paid for to upgrade to 1080p, and it's glorious. And it's about a good 180 seconds of just good old Star Trek space battle.
Wow.
And it looks so fantastic. And I'm like, okay, so they did this on a Kickstarter, right? Like they were able to get this. So with their little Kickstarter, they were able to do 3 minutes. CBS can do all 7 seasons. Like
CBS should be
14.
able to do all 7 seasons, or just the entire franchise over again. There's always some weird committee that's only paid to give no's. Like that's my job. I just tell people no. That's all I do. But like we're still in a time where Disney put out they tried to de-age Mark Hamill to play young Luke Skywalker.
Yes.
Return of the Jedi Black. And like I saw that shit, Mandalorian season 2, and I went, oh my God, this looks awful. Flash forward to like 3 months later, some kid just did a deep fake of it. It only looks slightly better, but it still looks better than what professionals did,
Yeah.
It can be done, but they just have to commit to it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's totally doable. It is totally doable. They just don't bother.
Yeah. But does that mean that we kibosh the Section 31 series? Because, I mean, it all costs money.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd gladly give up the Section 31 series for a remaster of Voyager and Deep Space Nine. Gladly. Because you know what? They'll have enough money to make the Section 31 series 2 years from now. Right? If they spend that money now on a remaster, they'll have the money next year or the year after, because they're corporations, and corporations cheat to not lose money. So they'll get that money by hook or by crook. They'll get it back, But I honestly believe that if Star Trek fans are collectors, we're nerds. Everybody has their Blu-rays of Deep Space Nine, of Next Generation. Everyone has their Blu-rays of Enterprise. Everyone has their Blu-rays of the original series. And they're just waiting to complete the collection with Deep Space Nine and Voyager. Even the people who hate the current era of Trek would still go buy those series.
We're currently just starting with Picard. We got the Strange New Worlds coming out 30 days from today. Is there anything that you were hoping for, or wishing for, or just looking forward to in this year of Star Trek 2022?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking forward to everything. I'm looking forward to see what stories Strange New Worlds tells, seeing how they fill in. I mean, it is truly uncharted. The bad news is that it's going backwards, but the good news is that it's going backwards with a captain and a crew we've never seen before. Okay. So, I mean, sure, we know that they have to live, but you know what? Every character has to live. That's the way these shows work. But it'll be interesting to see Pike, go through his paces and finally flesh out a character that was actually pretty cool. I mean, he came off as really good in the few episodes he was in the original series. So I really think Anson Mount as a lead actor is going to take this show far. But I'm looking forward to finishing up Picard. I think that it's going to really hit the nail on the head, because also they are filming seasons 2 and 3 concurrently. And so they've said the story is going to end with season 3 because, Patrick Stewart is getting up there. So he'd rather put a cap on it. And
you have to.
Yeah. So the fact that they know they're working towards something, I'm interested in seeing what they're working towards and how they're going to tell that story. And of course, Lower Decks is like a love letter to the fans. Really cool. And I'm super looking forward to where Discovery goes from here. You've got a Federation, you've got a Captain Burnham, you've got new friends, new foes. It's really good. These guys are really hitting their stride, so I can't wait to see where they go.
I feel like we could talk more about this, but we got to put a pin in this. But yeah, man, State of the Trek 2022. Things are looking strong. More Star Trek than ever. Is it too much? We will find out. But
yeah,
fans, don't overact because you don't like what you're not seeing, and don't overpraise something just because it's kind of okay.
Good news is with all this Trek, there's something for everyone. There's something for everyone. So watch what you like. Don't watch what you don't, and that's what's cool about it. You can still get your Trek, get something you love, and you don't have to watch all of it. Just accept that some things aren't made for you. That's all we all have. You can all learn that lesson. Some things aren't made for us.
That's how I feel about Disney's Pixar's Turning Red. I'm just not a Canadian Asian girl. I'm sorry. I can't do it. All right. Anyway, Jaimel, you got anything you want to plug here?
Yes. Check us out talking about Creed, because Creed 3 is coming soon. So come, download Sweet Science Cinema and check us out, because we do great stuff. Also, if you are in the Bay Area, Saturday, May 7th, 1 month from now, I will be at the Las Positas College Literary Arts Festival, and I'll be on an awesome panel with my friends Sean Taylor, Murphy Milburn, and Thaddeus Howes, talking about writing graphic novels, your story, your way. So if you're an aspiring writer or a writer who just wants to come chat it up with us and you're in the Bay Area, come to Las Positas College on May 7th.
Yo, if you're trying to get into comic books, if you're trying to write TV, if you're trying to write radio, if you're trying to write anything, this is the conference you want to go to, May 7th. It's really exciting, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Otherwise, you guys, I'm on a bunch of stuff. You know what I do. The Microdose today is a special day, but check out the normal Microdose every Friday. We talk guests high and low. It's a good time. Otherwise, Waffle Box Podcast. It's the best part of Wednesdays. Me and Mike Fish. We talk about everything and nothing all at the same time. It's a lot of fun. For Captain Jaimel Hemphill, I've been Chief Officer Hayes. You've been you. Live long and prosper.
From the BosNet family.
Like, all right, that says a lot more about you than me. Okay. Like,